Hey guys, Murph here, host of the Unsigned podcast. Just want to say thanks for coming back and checking us out. Took a brief break at the end of last year to, kind of re-energize and refocus. And we decided to switch things up a little bit. Instead of doing a weekly podcast, we're actually going to be doing a monthly podcast now. And this one is the first iteration of that. Essentially what it was a live recording of the podcast done via Zoom. And the reason I wanted to switch things up and do podcasts like this going forward was really just to open it up to listeners as well so that you guys can come and talk to the panel directly. Just want to give you guys the heads up going forward to keep an eye out for the RSVP links each month as we drop them across our socials and across, our website, studiotalk.co. Hopefully you guys find a ton of value in this and you look forward to signing up to the ones in the future. And, hopefully we see you on Zoom and in the chat. As for this month's episode 44, the Unsigned podcast, we talked about artists and live events during COVID and beyond. It's a topic I've talked about quite a bit on various blog posts and other podcast episodes, especially over the last year, but something that I wanted to bring back, especially given the vaccine rollout across the country and across the world. So this month I decided to check in with Cristina Jerome of R&B. She does brand partnerships over there. I've had her on the podcast before, and she provided a lot of great insight into how, artists should be, building their brand and providing value for their fans as well. I also spoke with Maarten, Walraven-Freeling from Stingray. He also runs the Music X newsletter and just a wealth of knowledge of, kind of the technical side of things. And we talked to him about, kind of rollouts. If you're going to be filming a bunch of content, during COVID times, how can you best capitalize on that, over a long period of time as opposed to just dropping a piece once and going away. And then lastly, we also spoke with Matt Levin from Endeavor Content. Really what his job is finding great content, great IP, and taking it from, podcast, TV, or film, and creating a live event around that and figuring out the best ways to monetize that as well. So again, can't thank these guys enough for coming through, especially on this new iteration of the Unsigned podcast. They were a great panel. This one's obviously a long one. It's an hour and a half. Hope you guys enjoy, and please get at me with any comments, questions, concerns. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. If you're an artist or manager that's looking for help building out the rollout for your next project, sign up for a one-on-one call with me, Murph, to talk about my new online course, How to Get Playlisted in 30 Days. Within the course, we talk about how to find and build your audience. We talk about how to get shows and build shows out even during COVID times. We talk about how to find writers and get press. And then lastly, we talk about how to find curators and pitch to get playlisted. Simply go to studiotalk.co/course. Thank you for coming through. We don't want to waste anybody's time. We want to make good use of it. So we'll jump right into things here. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes, talking with each person, give them, a full rundown of, their backstory and how they got into music. So Cristina, would love to start with you. If you don't mind spending a little bit of time, just giving us kind of the background, the company you work for, the company you run, kind of how you got your start in music as well.
Of course. So my name is Chris. I'm based here in LA. I own R&B, which is a marketing company catered towards R&B artists and R&B experiences. So before the pandemic, this looked like live shows and listening parties, which were so much fun before the pandemic ruined it. And then now we're more online. So this is a lot of social activations. We're doing a lot of Zoom listening parties. We're doing a lot of virtual shows. So kind of like that, working with the R&B artists and the brands that support it as well. So these are Atlantic, Warner Records, amazing, great brands, Red Bull as well, got them on board. That's what I've been doing to just promote R&B moving forward. How I got my start in music, to be very honest with you, this girl sent me an email and said, hey, check out my song. I feel like that's how it always starts. Hey, check out my song. So I listened to it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. This is a pretty good song. What are you going to do with this song? And she's like, I don't know. I have no idea. So honestly, that's where my love for R&B started. I started working with this girl, Alicia, who's now signed to Rock Nation. And my just efforts have been pushing R&B forward and working with these independent and these signed artists to push music forward. So that's what I've been doing for the past 5 years.
So very cool. Very cool. Thanks for coming through. And yeah, we're definitely going to be chopping it up with you in a couple of minutes, talking about, how artists can add value to their fans' lives during this time. you've seen that from a number of different angles, and so I think we'll be able to provide a lot of great insight. So appreciate you coming through. Next up, Maarten. Thanks again for being here. I know it's a little late on your end, but yeah, tell us a little bit about, or tell everyone else a little bit about yourself and how you got your start in music. Oh, I think I got to unmute you here. There you go.
Sorry, I thought I'd mute myself, but then I cannot unmute myself. But thanks. Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Maarten from the Netherlands, working for a Canadian company called Stingray. Let's see, where should I start? So I did a PhD in history, which was about sound, history of sound. And then I started working for a classical music TV channel. And that TV channel got bought by a bigger media company from Canada called Stingray, and I'm still working there. So I get to experience the fast-changing media landscape from, regular linear TV to subscription video on demand models and free advertising supported streaming television and all the works. Besides that, I co-edit a newsletter called Music X. And I work with a music theater company in the Netherlands called Liedhuis, which translates like classical art song house. So we promote the classical art song. And I'm involved with a new live streaming studio in Rotterdam called Garden.
Very cool. What's kind of the premise of the new studio?
Yeah. So basically we want to create a place where artists can come and have access to fantastic equipment, video equipment, audio equipment to record, to live stream, to create a multitude of different videos for all the social media platforms, etc., that are out there, and do so at super low cost for them. That's the idea.
Nice. How long is has that company been around?
It's starting.
Okay, like brand new. There you go.
Yeah, we're building it. We're building it right now. So it's
awesome. I mean, that's kind of perfect time. And to be honest, that's probably the best segue to Matt and what it is that you're working on, at Endeavor. So yeah, Matt, again, appreciate you coming through as well. And if you wouldn't mind just spending a little bit of time, giving everybody kind of your rundown, your background as well.
Yeah. My name is Matt Levin. I run Endeavor Content Live, which is a department in Endeavor Content. And I got my start in music in a bunch of weird ways. I mean, obviously just being a lifelong fan and growing up listening to Crosby, Stills and Nash, Santana, like all the 60s, 70s music. So my parents lived in that era. It was just like became a huge part of who I was. So I played in jazz band growing up, playing alto sax. So I went to a high school that was very musically inclined. So a lot of my friends would just come over to I would come back home from soccer practice and they would just be in my house, like playing music. So I interned at VH1, I interned at Webster Hall. And then after college, I ended up getting a gig at WME in their music department, in which I was there for a while. Ended up leaving to go do management and start my own rooftop concert series around Brooklyn and Manhattan. I still managed an artist, and then I came back to eventually take over my group at EC Live, where it's our in-house live event and touring production arm. So we produce tours, do a lot of licensing in the IP front, and we sell our shows around the world. So it's kind of a soup to nuts production team that we have. So it's been great. Music's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's again, one of the other reasons I wanted to have you come on as well is really the landscape of that has changed so much. Like, when we were first talking about having you come on, it was like, no, you already had like a couple of tours built out that you had to literally stop and just remake all that from scratch. And I think there's just a lot of value in that. And then not to mention all the facets that you actually work in. You're not just like, oh, we kind of just do the production. You were like, no, you do, just like you said, soup to nuts. You literally focus on every part of building a show or a tour. And it's really centered around content and an idea. And I think, again, a lot of artists can just kind of pull insights from that and say, oh, look, this is what they're doing at the highest level. There's definitely things that I can take and keep in mind as I start to build and scale up. So again, man, appreciate you coming through.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Cool. All right. So now we're gonna just kind of jump into things. Gonna talk to each person individually, just about some topics that they focus on a day to day. So, Chris, want to start with you. One thing that we'd mentioned a couple of minutes ago is, artists, they're definitely brands at this point in time. Everything is shifted, where, they can really build out businesses outside of music. And unfortunately, music is kind of like a lost leader a lot of the time. So, kind of with that in mind, how do you think artists can and should be adding value to their fans' lives during the pandemic?
I love that. I love and hate this pandemic because I will say that I've become fans of so many different artists just based on the content that they've been putting out. When it comes to value, I love to relate to people. I love to feel like sometimes artists don't realize, or like the fans don't realize, that the people that we're fans of are just like us. Like Drake is just like us. Travis Scott is just like us. SZA is just like us. So now that we're seeing them in their element, seeing how creative they can get from at home. A lot of artists have not left their home. I think that's the value that people are starting to realize, that, hey, these artists are sticking it out just like we are. Like, they can't go to work, they can't order food in, they can't do a lot of the things that we can do. So now that they're trying to put this in their social media and they're creating all this content around it, I'm absolutely loving it. I've been a friend of Sweetie's for a while, but now I'm just like team Sweetie's. Like, all the content that she's been putting out has been amazing. So yes, adding that value is definitely in the personality tip for sure.
Gotcha. And then is there kind of within that, is there anything that you see artists doing that's kind of, music adjacent that is adding value to the fans' life? Like somebody making a weekly playlist, for instance, or sending out newsletters, or just, because typically it's like, hey, an artist like releases a project and then the value add is doing a tour or doing merch. And like now it's kind of like, you number one, you can't tour, and the merch is like, okay, how you can only drop so much. So one of the things that I've been just trying to pay attention to is just like, what are some interesting ways that artists are trying to, just like you said, humanize themselves, but like really going all in? Anything that you've seen that's during this time that's just been like, oh wow, that's like a really cool way and made you more a fan of Sweetie, for instance?
I don't believe it was Sweetie. I cannot remember the name of the artist, but this artist created a candle and created a QR code, because QR codes are back now, guys, apparently. They created this QR code with a candle for us to listen to a specific playlist or a specific song that came with that candle. And people are just honestly getting so much creative because we're in our houses. I have tons of candles because, like, what else am I doing right now? So I'm collecting candles. I'm collecting merchandise, collecting home items. So these artists are personifying their music into these home items, or which are making me buy them because I need the home items, and then tying their music back into it with these QR codes, or telling us that here's a special link, or you joined our email list, here's a special way to get in contact with me. I feel like community and Superphone have always been like a thing, but now the people are really tapping back into community and Superphone and allowing us to text the artists, one-on-one. Yeah. So a lot of these things are really working, and I'm as a marketer, I'm still feeding into it. So I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like part of our job as marketers is to like really see what's working and what's not working, and to sign up for a bunch of stuff and see how people are.
I'm on everyone's email list. I'm texting so many people. I love it.
I agree. And Maarten will definitely jump into this because I want to get your take on the newsletter piece too. But I feel like there's an opportunity there for artists still to create that newsletter so that they can really own the relationship. Still like, Drake may have 50, 60 million Instagram followers, but it's like Facebook and Instagram still own that relationship ultimately.
Also, these algorithms, I'm gonna be very honest with you and candid, these algorithms suck. They suck. There's people that I've been fans of that I can't, I remember following you a year ago and I never see your post anymore. So when you're creating these newsletters or you're setting up community or Superphones, you're direct contact with your fans. You're never going to miss unless their phone is off or their email is broken. Right. You're never gonna miss. So that's why I love, and I always encourage artists to set up a newsletter, set up a community phone, like do something something to keep in touch directly with your fan base, because the algorithms, they suck. You can't always hit it, so with this way you're able to hit them directly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you never know when it's going to change. Like that is the other big piece of it. And you don't want to miss out. And again, I think that's just building a tighter community, a tighter relationship. And I think we're going to see, I hope that we're going to see more of that, more newsletters coming out, more direct communication. The texting thing is cool. We all kind of know that that's like fake. That the savvier fans and marketers, we kind of know that's fake, but I still think that's going to be interesting because more and more people are going to get into it because it's just a more direct.
Also data collection. I can log onto my community right now and see, like, I'm texting, a 22-year-old girl in New York, that's a big fan of this artist. So it's also data collection. I know exactly who I'm talking to. So when I'm time to retarget or remarket, I know exactly where to hit.
Yeah, exactly. Amazingly beneficial. Couldn't agree more. The other thing I want to talk about too, we were talking about the algorithms, just kind of along that same line. There's so many platforms for artists to be on today. Where should they be focusing their attention, and which ones do you think will kind of have the lasting power? Maybe some things that have popped up, like Clubhouse, for example. Do you think some of those platforms are going to be able to sustain the pandemic? Snapchat is kind of coming back around because they have the, artist fund, and they're pumping out $1 million, they're giving away, essentially, not even giving away, but they're, paying out $1 million a day to creators. Just kind of want to get your thoughts on platforms in general, which ones you think artists should be on, and kind of where you see it going from here.
Of course. I think artists should always be where their fans are, regardless of what's hot or what's new or whatever it's popping. I think that artists should always be where their fans are. So if they are on Clubhouse, be there, create a listening party or a secret room for you and your fans to connect. Or if it's TikTok, create that TikTok community for you and your friends, or you and your fans, to do other content other than music. Honestly, it's impossible to be everywhere at every spot. So I can't say like, hey, you should be on these 5 platforms and nothing else. Be where your fans are, and also be where your reach is. I think sometimes when it comes to TikTok specifically, people think of it as, a younger app or a dancing app. There's a lot of creativity that goes on TikToks. And as soon as you find your niche or find whatever content that you want to put specifically on TikTok, your fans will go there, and your new fans will find it and follow you elsewhere. So honestly, just be where your fans are. That's my best advice. And Clubhouse is cool. Clubhouse is definitely a great place to connect and meet some very interesting people. But with every platform, you just have to be mindful. Be mindful of who your audience is and who you're talking to, and whatever content you create, make sure that you're able to reach those people specifically for that platform, instead of like, how we're all reposting our TikToks on Reels. It's not working anymore. So we have to create content specifically for each platform. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, well said. I think at a number of levels too, like knowing your audience is like so overlooked. Like a lot of times, and it's tough when you're just starting out. You like
marketing. That's the whole key right there.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, if you can really, if you can map that out from jump, I think you're going to be in a much better spot as an artist or manager, saying, okay, these are the people that we're trying to talk to, and then figure out where they are, and then go there, and then be a part of that community and make content that makes sense for that specific platform. And you're seeing it, like the TikTok thing that you just mentioned too. Like, obviously Instagram is big enough to just, just like copy, the idea and create reels, but now they're cracking down on it as well. And they're, not going to be allowing the watermark, the TikTok watermark to go over on Instagram and do just as well. And so it's really about paying attention to those trends and understanding each platform, just like you said. So that way, you're creating content that's going to give you the biggest reach. And then again, to your point, I think it's so beneficial to really understand you can't be everywhere all the time,
physically impossible.
Exactly. So what I like to tell people too is, like, I think it's smart to like hop on the platforms and like claim your name, right? So you kind of like own that. At least you don't necessarily have to post on there, but then you can be agile, right? If like Twitter is, the dominant thing in a year, then like, okay, I'm going to really double and triple down over there because there's something new and interesting you want to do. I think it's
Or
really
for specific content. I give this to Frank Ocean all the time. Frank Ocean is probably the only, Frank Ocean, Selena Gomez, and I think Taylor are the only people that still use Tumblr. And Frank Ocean will get on Tumblr and type this pretty little note for no reason, and all the fans will find it. So you have to utilize like these other platforms as well for very specific content. So that way you can be everywhere at one time, but you don't also have to put all of your energy into every platform at one time.
Yeah, well said. Maarten, definitely want to get your take on NFTs because I think that's a unique space that is definitely going to change things over the next several years as well. But one more question for you, Chris. What do you think is one thing that artists have learned or should have learned during the pandemic that they're going to be able to carry over into the future when things go back to normal, quote unquote?
I think it's finally clicking for some artists that they're so much bigger than their music. That music is just one way to make money. Touring is one way to make music. There's money. There's so many ways for you to make money or just, contribute creativity as an artist. And I think that because of the pandemic, it's starting to make artists become more creative and more innovative to what they've already been doing. And then also find other hobbies that they're interested in and implement their music in that way. Like I've seen artists like Umi specifically like painting. Like who knew the girl could paint, but she's painting with her music playing in the background. I love it. It's very airy and like earth-like. I love it. All of a sudden I'm interested in painting. Who knows? So it's like, now that I'm seeing that artists are learning that we can't always make money from touring or merching, I have to get creative. I think it's clicking for them. And moving forward, they're always going to realize that I don't always have to go on tour to make money. I can make merchandise. I can do a party for my fans. I can do XYZ to continue to have this relevance for myself. So I love it. And I want to see what that looks like in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's really the time where artists are understanding that they are a business and like they're going to flex their muscles in different ways and things go back to the music. It's like whatever you're talking about in your music, like you don't just need to put that on a t-shirt. How else can you, articulate that or make people feel a part of that world?
Look at Rihanna. Rihanna never has to give us an album again. I'm going to cry. But she never has to give us an album again. She's personified her music into her makeup, into a fashion line, into a lingerie line. She's giving us so much and we're seeing multifaceted sides of her. So that's what I'm starting to see from artists and I love it.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Well, appreciate you jumping in there. Again, we'll kind of come back around at the end. We'll do a little bit of a group chat, but Maarten, would love to chop it up with you for a couple of minutes as well here. Just like you had talked about before, and we mentioned you run your own newsletter. You also write for a couple of other people too. You wrote a great article for Sherry Hughes, Water and Music. And if you guys don't follow Sherry, please do. She's amazing. I don't know how she has the time to do everything she does. It's crazy. But Maarten, you wrote a great article a couple of months back, kind of about waterfalls and the waterfall release strategy. And I want to talk about that for a second. Because I think it's extremely important. A lot of times up and coming artists just think like, oh, just put music out and just go. And I'm going to put everything out all at once, or I'm just going to do one song at a time. And there's no clear cut thing. They're like, I'll put out one song and see what happens and then go to the next thing. And while it's great to be flexible, it should also kind of be part of a bigger plan. And I think that's what your article talked about. So and again, just to give everybody a little bit more context, I think the article was really about what movie studios have done in the past with the waterfall strategy. But I'll stop talking. Want to ask you to kind of just give a little bit more context for those that haven't read as to what the article was about and kind of why you think that's an important strategy to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on when it comes to just basically copying what's happening in the film world, right? In the movie world, and what you see there is the opposite of what we should be doing in the music world. So in the film world, you see these windows contracting. Last December, all throughout the last year, everything is about films not going into theater, but going straight to these SVOD platforms. That, you know, Paramount Plus is coming out. We have Warner with their HBO Max. We have Disney, etc., etc. So everybody has their own platform, and those windows are shrinking. But when it comes to music, and especially with live streaming, we have no windows, and live streams are often made just as a one-off, and that's it. Part of the reason for that is, of course, the rights. If you do something live, you have to get involved with a lot less of, you know, IP and rights clearing and stuff like that. And if you want to make something available on demand afterwards, you have to clear everything conceivable from the last 100 years of rights. And
I see Matt just chomping at the bit over there. Like, yep, yeah, yep.
And this is basically the premise, right? So if you have a live stream, think about what you want to do with it afterwards. So you look at the big stars of the past year, so Dua Lipa, but even, you know, slightly smaller acts like a Laura Marling or a Nick Cave. What happens if you put that live stream out again? Or what happens if you do it live, ticketed, of course, and then you put it out on a major SVOD platform, or like a dedicated niche platform that is just for music, right? And then at some point, you know, you make it available somewhere else again. They did this with the Laura Marling performance, the one that she did with Dice, I think, from London, one of the first major ticketed ones. And they did it again on the 31st of January or the 30th of January. And I haven't seen any data yet, but I'm super curious how many tickets were sold in the second run there. But that's the kind of thinking that we're aiming for. And like I was saying in my introduction, there's so much more you can do. You know, you can do a live stream and grab a 5-minute clip, grab a 90-second clip, grab a 10-second clip for all these various platforms that are out there. And that's sort of, generally speaking, the thinking behind the whole Waterfall strategy.
Yeah, and the thing that I like about that is it's, you know, oftentimes every artist knows that they need to post a lot on social media, right? But over time, you just get completely burnt out because you're like constantly trying to think of these ideas. I think if you're able to take time and map out the strategy of like, hey, I'm going to film this one thing, and then think about how you can chop that up into 20 or 30 different pieces of content, and that'll give you, you know, 2 months worth of stuff. That saves a lot of headache. You know, you're going to spend a little, you know, a week or two developing, strategizing. You spend another week shooting all that stuff, maybe another week like editing all that up. So you kind of have a month right there. But then if that sets you up for 2 or 3 months worth of content, I think that's a great way to, again, really start to build out a business. And that's what a lot of artists don't think about. They're just like, oh, I know I have to post there, but I got to make music too. And they're trying to do too much all at once. So if they can take a step back and think of that long-term strategy, I think it'd be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's, so the article was really, it went into like the major players, right? And they of course have big budgets, large production crews, access to great studios, etc., etc. So there's actually, I'm going to write a follow-up article that's more going towards emerging artists and more like a how-to of what you need to do if you're not Dua Lipa or BTS or Billie Eilish, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like the best segue into this next question. Within the article, you were talking about hot and cold media. Can you explain a little bit more about what that means and how artists that are just starting out with limited budgets can actually create higher quality content? Or even, you know, if they have to do that just starting out.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this goes back to what Cristina was saying as well. It's like, I mean, Marshall McLuhan is like the godfather of cultural studies, right? Of media studies. He wrote most of his stuff in the 50s and 60s. I studied cultural studies, so he's like this beacon, keeps coming back, and he's always right. So this thing with hot and cold media is really, so like hot media is like low participation, So a live stream where there's no interaction, people are just watching, or his example was listening to the radio. Cool media is like high participation, but not necessarily super high production values. But a lot of interaction. Like his example would be talking to a friend on the phone. Our example right now would probably be Clubhouse. But yeah, you have to think about the different ways in which you do that. So if you are one of those people that live streams a lot, right? If you're one of those artists that went and sat down and went on Twitch or YouTube or whatever platform you use, and you just did that a couple of times a week, you can do that, and that's great. And there's a lot of interaction, and you get tips and all that sort of stuff. And then maybe one time you invest and you go to like a proper studio and you think of a whole concept, and you pay a little bit more money, but you get a much better product that you can use in a lot of different places.
Yeah, and that again just kind of harkens back to what we were talking a minute ago. Really, just trying to strategize better and say, if I'm gonna spend a bunch of money, with the limited amount of money I do have, how long can I make this stretch? And
Yeah.
I don't really think artists were thinking about that in deep terms, especially now people just starting out, even before the pandemic. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the benefits of this, because it's like you really have to like sit down and think about, because you can't go anywhere else, like, how can I make this stuff last? I don't have any money. What can I do with the little bit I do have, or how do I save up money? And to me, I think a lot of these are all creative problems to solve. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, great, you don't have enough money, but that doesn't mean you can't be creative. And I think oftentimes people just say, well, I don't have money, so I can't do it. And it's like, a lot of times, think about the best parties you ever went to when you were younger. It was like, there was no money. You know what I mean? It was just people getting together, throwing in 10, 20 bucks or whatever they could to like make some cool shit. So like, how can you do that right now? And there's definitely ways to do it. Maybe it's just like you said, saving up a couple $100 and going to a nice studio and filming a whole bunch of stuff in there. You're doing like your live studio session in there. Studios need money, so it's cheaper now anyway. So that's a great investment. And, while you're there, it's like, you really have to think of it from a production standpoint. What photos are you going to take for your photo shoot? What TikToks can you create while you're there? You're really trying to maximize your time. So it's not like, oh, I'm just doing this to be cool and be in the studio, and maybe it's like you spend, another hour or two in there recording new material as well that kind of gets you set up for the next one as well. And you create some behind the scenes footage with that. And it's,
and maybe they can do multi-track recording, and,
right.
and if you spend, it doesn't take that much money to do some overdubbing, and you have another release on Spotify as well, so
yeah, all of that.
so much stuff.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. One of the other things that you also talked about within there was, kind of the benefits, for bigger artists, looking to partner with Amazon or Apple for kind of distribution with the on-demand videos because of all the other parts of their businesses that kind of align with the artist needs and revenue models. Where do you see that going? How deep does it make, how deep should artists be integrated with one platform?
Oh, it's a big question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think anyone will get totally hooked to only one platform. They may get their partnerships like Beyonce has with Disney now, seemingly. But, there's a lot to be said for a big platform like Netflix or Amazon Prime to spend money on music, right? So, and they create these one-offs, they create these documentaries, these concert films, and they're huge and they're big and they're very well produced, and it's wonderful. But there's a whole world out there for everybody else as well. And I don't think that those major platforms are going to step into that, because it won't provide scale, not on the level that they are interested in, right?
Right, yeah.
But there are a ton of, like one of the people I spoke to for the article as well was from Stageit, and Stageit is basically one of the older live streaming platforms out there. And the thing that we were talking about a lot was like, how do you create this feeling of like walking through, I don't know, what's your favorite like music city, like New Orleans or something, and walking through the French Quarter there, you know, and just hearing some bass playing from a bar. So you think like, hey, I like this, I'm going to step in there. And that's not something that's ever going to be replicated on like a Netflix or an Amazon Prime Video, as much as you can scroll through a whole music section there. So there's a lot of potential there as well for platforms to come in and kind of help create that kind of, I don't know, sensibility or something.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunity for those upstarts to come in, just like you're saying, and add that value. I also think it's interesting if those bigger platforms. I think what I think is going to happen is you're going to see, you know, you're kind of already seeing it with Amazon and Rihanna and, you know, her Fenty, the Savage, you know, kind of fashion shows that are taking place. But I think it'll be interesting if an artist is like, hey, it's got to be someone big, obviously, like a Beyonce goes to Apple Music and does something, and then eventually she's part of their health community as well, right? They have their new Fit app or whatever it's called, right? That they're kind of like rebranding, and now they're really about kind of bundling a service. I think it'll be interesting to see how deep an artist can go into that, right? How deep they can get into one world. Like, okay, Beyonce's gonna like, and this goes back to the conversation with Chris, you know, Chris, that we were talking about, like how is an artist like expanding their reach? It's like, all right, Beyonce's gonna hop on the bike and she's gonna, you know, do a workout with you there, and then like you can switch over to Apple TV when you're done with that, and you can watch her new video or her new show, or boom, then you can switch over to Apple Music when you're in the car and you're driving and you want to listen to that, or like you got fucking Beyonce giving you, you know, directions from Siri at some point, you know what I mean? Like then all that sort of stuff just kind of gets really, really deep. So I think it'll be interesting to see how some of those bigger people, you know, use that. And then like you go to somebody like Amazon. Does Amazon eventually buy up like a ton of independent merch companies? You know what I mean? So that artists can do, you know, their drop shipping all with Amazon, you know, and they can keep everything there. Oh, they want to be on Twitch. Great, they can be on Twitch. They can be on Amazon Prime. I think Amazon has like a lot of opportunity there, because obviously we all think of them as kind of like the smallest of the DSPs, right? Although they're the biggest company. It's so I just think there's a lot of room to play there too. And curious your thoughts on Amazon in particular.
Well, I mean, Amazon is an interesting one. So, of course, just like a couple of years ago, everybody was going on about how Amazon and their pricing structure was the most complicated thing in the world, and why does it have to be so convoluted, and why are there so many tiers and nobody gets it. And now everybody's like, oh no, wait, that's actually how you're supposed to do it, right? It's stupid to just have that one $10, €10 tier that everybody has to subscribe to. You need to pull people in, and I mean, you see Spotify's ARPU going down again, but that's just because they're growing in these, you know, territories across the world where they have to charge a lot less money. So it would make sense if they would charge more money elsewhere. And then there's the demographic for Amazon, which is slightly older, you know, the people that are attached to their Echo speaker. So, I mean, my sense with Amazon is that they're potentially the biggest. Yeah. But they don't necessarily focus on the young crowd, right? And that's something I know from Stingray as well. It's not very sexy, but it's a big amount of people, you know, and they all have usually more money to spend as well.
Yeah, I think they've also just grown up with the technology. I think our generation, you know, kind of that 30, you know, 28 to like, 30, we'll call it 30 to like 40. We were kind of the last generation to like grow up before the internet. So like we had AOL and, AIM and when Yahoo was popping, like we remember that, but we also remember like we had to go outside and play, you know what I mean? To like be a human. Now it's just a completely different world where like everything is on demand and everything is at your fingertips. So like while those younger people may not have the money like just yet, they're, you know, we see that everything happening kind of in China and the way those platforms are tipping people and it's, you know, pennies on the dollar. I think we're going to start to adopt a lot of that. And if you have that, you know, that younger generation that's really big, that's already on their phones all the time, I think you're going to see that shift where like artists are going to be able to make more money, and it's going to become commonplace of just tipping for performances and shows. And hopefully artists will be able to make, you know, more money, the money that they deserve, like the real value, and not letting a platform dictate how much.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a strong believer that will happen if we can go more and more direct to the fan, right? The more you get people to pay you directly, the better it's going to be for the artist in the end. You'll probably get different kinds of middlemen, the one who can help you with your direct to fan strategy and stuff like that. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting ride for sure in the next couple of years to see where that's going.
Definitely cool, man. Appreciate the time, and again we'll circle back here. Matt, definitely want to chop it up with you as well. Appreciate you you know, kind of sitting through. Like I said, I could see you chomping at the bit, like, oh man, like let's I deal with this every day, all day, and you have for the last couple of years. So I want to start right there. You know, one of the things that you do for Endeavor is kind of find the content and turn it into a live event. So, you know, you really deal with like securing the rights, you know, to the production and the marketing of the events, the branding. You guys handle a lot of it. So again, that's why I thought it was interesting to kind of have all three of you here. You know, Chris, you kind of deal more so in management and helping artists build out their strategy. Maarten, you know, you kind of deal with a little bit of that, but also the tech side and kind of how those two worlds merge. And then Matt, you're in it where you're taking like big ideas that aren't in a specific space and kind of like remixing them to, again, kind of add more value and find that for fans. So you know, what you do again is about the actual creation more so on a day-to-day. So, you know, I just want to start there. How do you go about, you know, finding projects to take, you know, from the screen and bring it into the real world?
It's a good question. I mean, it goes in two different directions, whether it's older IP or whether it's upcoming IP, and that can be film, albums, TV shows, podcasts, like any type of entertainment. It kind of all blends into it. But a lot of what we do is producing films in concert, where it's a screening of a film with a live orchestra playing the score and soundtrack live on stage. And now we're obviously doing a bunch more, whether it's in the talent space or podcast space. But I would say a lot of it really has to do with, one, who are the rights holders? Do we have a good relationship with them? And then figuring out all the subsidiary people involved. So the director, the producers, who's the composer of said piece of film, who's the actual talent, and figuring out, one, is this a piece of IP or is this talent one-dimensional, or how can we transition them into being a multi-dimensional type of artist or a multi-dimensional type of IP, if you will. So it really comes into just like watching a ton of content and then figuring out all the analytics between it. So it's how much music is in it, where are the splits, how long is the runtime, are we going to go into overtime if we present this into the real world, what demographics that has this hit, what are the box offices, what territories did it do well in, so that we can kind of get the full encompassing picture of being able to sell this to as many markets as humanly possible. Because to be honest, it's like the music market, especially in the United States, or at least the way that I see it, I mean, it's massive, it's huge, it's sexy, it's bold, it's loud. But to me, I don't want to just do something just in the US. That's not how we maximize things. It's, how can I bring this to Japan? How can I bring this to Australia, the UK, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, Germany? Like, we want to tap into as many different countries as we possibly can, because the more we do that, the more money we're going to make for all of our partners. So that's really my end goal for a lot of it, because I can be really picky with the IP that we come across, but ultimately, I think that's a good thing because we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And especially when you're putting your company's money into building something out that could cost anywhere between $30K to $500,000 to put onto the market, it better sell. So, so it's really looking at all the facets of who's involved. And for me, I think one thing that I am super interested in, especially in the talent space, is figuring out who are those hyper creatives. So going back to Chris's point earlier, it's, you got to do more than one thing. I like, yes, you can hone your skill sets, you find your fans in that area, but you better be thinking of 30 other ideas, whether it's you want to write as, and I don't care if they're bad or if they're good or whatever, just as long as you're thinking differently and you have an appetite to go try something new where we can be flexible and kind of build it from the ground up and then scale as it grows, you better be thinking about all that type of stuff. So to me, that's, I think, where a lot of this is going. The non-traditional touring world where you're going into symphony halls and performing arts centers or amphitheaters, you're not going to your standard clubs. I think there's a lot of room for growth there, especially as this develops. I mean, the pandemic obviously sucked for music because most people make their money through touring and through merch, and that's been gone for a year, and it will continue to be gone for a little bit in 21. But if you have that creative lens where you take the time to kind of sit back, create content, and develop your skills and figure out what you want to do, then people are going to be knocking at your door left, right, and center. So I think a lot goes into it when identifying a piece of IP or a piece of talent for this type of space. And I think the more that people lean into it and want to get their message across, the better. If you're taking a musician, let's just say it's like John Mayer, for instance, where he wants to do a tour or that has like a public speaking engagement, it's a non-traditional thing. It's kind of figuring out what's that rock star moment. When you're going to a concert, you know what that rock star moment is. It's when the lead singer throws their shirt off and you catch it, or you get the guitar pick flick. But it's like, how can you create that same type of moment where audience and fans are going to be like, that was tight, even if it's just a spoken word show or if it's just an interview style format. And a lot of that comes from live audience Q&A. You get a chance to ask this person who you idolize an unfiltered question and get their unfiltered response. They may tell you to go shut up, it was a stupid question, but you're still going to get that. And you're going to be like, X, Y, and Z just told me to go shut up. Like, that's awesome. You're going to tell people about that.
Definitely.
And
yeah, I think I was going to say, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I think that's really what it's about. It's just like artists being able to continue to share stories in different mediums. It's like, hey, if you're starting with the music, that's a great place. Now it's like, hey, what else are you about? It goes back to like, hey, who's your audience? Who are you trying to talk to? What do you care about? You know what I mean? And going and finding those people and then creating, something around it. Because at the end of the day, that's what people are looking for when they go to a live event. They want that emotional moment that attaches them. And if you can get it in a different way, like not just the music and in a Q&A, that is like, oh my God, it takes it from like here to here where you're like, I actually spoke to them. That's going to change your life. You're always going to remember that because of how big a fan you were. So yeah, I think just well said. I think we are in a perfect time for that, right? Especially for artists that are just starting out, because like you have all these tools available to you, right? It's not easy, right? I don't want to like oversimplify this, right? Because this shit is hard to do. It's hard to stand out with so many people doing this, but you do have the tools, and it is a very simple thing, and it's about coming up with an idea and just running it down and being what's the quote that I just heard recently? It's like Jeff Bezos had a quote. It was something like, you're flexible on the details, right? Like
yeah.
you're not flexible on the end goal, but you're flexible on the details of like how you get there. That's what people need to think about. So think about like what your goal is and how you're going to reach those people, and then be flexible on like how you get there. Because just like you said, if you're open to that, good things are going to start to happen. You're going to find those opportunities. And this is about the long run. I imagine what you do is taking a lot of, just like you said, things that have already worked and remixing it for a new audience. And I think if artists can think about that from the jump, hey, I got this great album, but this shit is going to work in 20 years when I go to like play it in front of like my older self in 20 years in like a smaller space, and I could see it going this way. And again, I think it just goes back to like being creative, being flexible with it.
Yeah, and I think that model creates shelf life that you wouldn't have for your IP or your content in totally different ways that can bring in all different types of demographics. Let's say you have a movie. I mean, obviously you have your theatrical run, and then you have your home release of DVD, video, Blu-ray, pay-per-view, whatever. But typically in the past, that's where it ends. But through live entertainment, it can carry on for years and years and years. And if you find that cult movie or that evergreen title, it can just go every single year, and it can generate millions of dollars for your partners and for yourself. Really, it's pretty special, and it gives people a way to view the IP in a completely different light. And it's funny. When I was first starting music, I was like really wanted to do contemporary music. Like I loved rock music, and granted, I was familiar with a lot of like the symphony projects. But when I went to my first one, I would think my first one was like Harry Potter in concert at Radio City Music Hall. You quickly realize you have 60 plus professional musicians on stage that you put any type of sheet music in front of them, and they're going to play it to the T, and it's going to be loud and it's in your face. And obviously the music in a movie or in a TV show is very complimentary, and a lot of the times just like the average viewer might not be paying too much attention to it, but that's what you're paying attention to during these shows. And the more artists that can get involved with it, it's like you have the Metallica S&M album that they did with the San Francisco Symphony. You have heavy rock band paired with a symphony.
Yeah,
that's going to sound completely different from what you're used to, but it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
The more instruments, the more like the people you have complementing each other in so many different and classical and old traditional ways blended with new types of media and new types of music. It's just like there's so many different avenues that you can explore, and then also start to think about how can we create ancillary revenue off of this type of thing. So whether it's doing a live stream of the show, or it's filming the show, or it's recording the audio from the show, obviously lots of rights and clearances involved in all of that, but it's all on the table.
Yeah.
So you can only do as much as you limit yourself to, really, in this world.
Yeah, well said. Great segue into kind of the next question too. Like, how do you see live events in streaming, kind of merging in the future? Like, we're already seeing that, but where do you see it going from here?
I mean, I have an interesting relationship with the streaming world. I think early in the pandemic, it was really valuable for reach and to make sure that they weren't taking like a step back. A lot of it was free, Instagram Live, Facebook Live, whatever. But for me, I think there's so many different blends that can happen. I think throughout the year, as touring and live events are kind of still halted, you got to be creative with your stream. I could care less about watching whether it's a huge name artist, like even if like I could care less if they're doing it from their backyard or if they're doing it from their studio or their bedroom. It's just like, I don't care. I've seen it for 8 months straight. This is boring.
Yeah.
Figure out a way, if you have the means or the financial means, or if you have a partner in a studio or a production company that's willing to put some capital down, do it the right way. Like what Maarten was saying earlier, it's like, how can you take the stream and then how can you monetize it later on? And it's go to a scenic venue, rent it out, whether it's an independent venue or a larger amphitheater, or go to a scenic location, whether that you do it at like Yellowstone or on the rooftop of a classy hotel that has like a ridiculous panoramic view of a city. Like that will go so much farther down the road than you just like putting a mic in front of your bed and you singing a song. Obviously that's not going to be for everyone, and I suggest that the more content you have, even if you are up and coming, like the better it is to keep that out there. But if you're a medium tier to a larger name artist, you got to get creative with it, because there's ways that you can monetize this way down the road. So I think there will be ways to blend the two together, whether it's live streaming events from, if you're going into secondary or tertiary markets, where if someone in Oklahoma, let's just say Oklahoma City, isn't able to go to the show that's an hour and a half away, you can geo target those. So that streaming event, you charge like $5-10 and kind of create some video packages or a VIP experience, if you will, that the artist can interact. I think that can blend really nicely together, and it's not that much of a heavy lift.
Yeah, I think there's some cool companies that are starting to do stuff. What's it called? It's like House Moment or something like that. It's a company based in LA. They did the Justin Bieber like New Year's Eve thing, but they're starting to open it up to some other artists, some up and coming people. So I think, and they offer like a slew of different tools like you're talking about. I am not a part of the company whatsoever. Let me state that. I've just checked it out and did my own digging on the project that I was working on. I was like, oh shit, it's like, it's really, you're going to start to see kind of the convergence of all that stuff. Like you're going to be able to do like the live or, kind of meet and greet, Zoom-esque thing via that app, and you're going to be able to ticket everything accordingly, and you're going to be able to get paid through one spot. So I think I think you're going to start to see that. And then you can obviously record all that. You can chop all that stuff up later, and then you can use it elsewhere. So yeah, I think, again, we're just getting more and more tools accessible for people with limited budgets. And
yeah, and don't forget about AR and VR too. Like with it's like VR obviously is a lot more expensive, but like augmented reality type of content where you can put a sticker up on a lamppost somewhere and you scan it, and it's like you have like a brand new, like a sample from one of their songs, or it's just like all of that type of stuff. Like AR doesn't cost that much to do. I mean, I took a class on it in college, and like you can create like a walk around tour of a city where different sounds will play at you. And it's like, you could, if it takes like a week and a half to learn, and it might not be the best, but at least you're doing something with it.
Right, exactly. And you're offering that unique perspective, that different value add to someone's life. Hey, you can't be around people, cool, like hop on this like app that's going to take you to like this special place so that you can interact with the music yourself, and then bring that back online, and then that's how you share it with the community. And yeah, I think all of those tools are just it's only to the benefit of people that are just starting out. So yeah, it's exciting times. One final question just for you. You've done really big productions with a lot of people, clear a lot of different stuff. What are some tips or insights that artists starting out can take from the things that you've done?
I would say be as involved as you want to be in all of your ancillary projects. You never know where your music is going to end up, whether it's through sync or through licensing, or if you're don't be afraid to go into different genres as well too. I mean, obviously a lot of artists, they need to hone in on their one specific genre and build up their fan base from there, but don't be afraid to take a risk as far as wanting to compose music for TV shows or for movies. Think about how they can be involved with all their other projects. So if they can get into a movie as not necessarily the composer, if you will, but if they're involved in the soundtrack, or if they want to create an original song for a movie or a TV series, how can you monetize that later on? How can I be involved in the show? How can I get a fee for being involved in the show? How can I retain certain rights so that I have more ownership over the stuff that I'm creating? If it's not necessarily through a record deal, but if it's through something that's completely else, that you can control. I mean, the way that I see entertainment going, it's you have all of these new production shops and management / agency shops popping up now, and I think a lot of it's going to be making sure you have a really good rights management team on your hands. It's that you're not being taken advantage of, but that you can actually control what's going out there. So I mean, obviously it depends with the team that you surround yourself on that's aware of all of this, because you don't want it to kill deals if it's going to ruin your career. But how can you be involved in that creative process where you're tapping into all of these different facets of entertainment, whether it's sports, or digital, film and TV, obviously soundtrack and touring, like making sure that the team around you isn't just focused on touring and merch, because that's where people have been focused for the past 40 plus years, where people make most of their money. And times are changing, because obviously this year proved that you need to do a lot more. And if you do that, you're going to be in a really good spot for the rest of your career. You don't want to be a Crosby from Crosby, Stills and Nash, who had to sell his entire catalog because he hasn't been able to make any money.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. I think this past year's really just been like just a major shift. It's like, hey, everything that worked for like 40 years that was like tried and true is no longer the only way that you're going to be able to make money. And so, interesting thing, I think that's why you're seeing a lot of people cash out, because they're like, hey, these, with what's his name over at Hypnosis, the things that they're doing and just buying up all these major catalogs, like it's not going to go on forever. There's only so much money, and that the value of that music is just going, I think, is going to go down over time, because there's going to be so much more material coming out in so many different and presented in so many different ways, that there's going to be more value for a Childish Gambino project, because he had an album, he had a movie, he had a TV show that was all wrapped up in one, and it touched so many different people, as opposed to like one song that was popular 40 years ago that got played on like a specific radio station for the last 30 years, but gets a TV placement every now and again. It's like there's just so much more music that it's just going to be beating that stuff out.
yeah, and Childish Gambino is the perfect example of that hyper creative. Who started his career in comedy, transitioned to music, transitioned to TV, to film. He can, like, if you're able, obviously, like, he is so special, and it's going to be
the exception, the exception to the rule, but still something to note for sure.
Yeah, that should be someone a lot of artists, regardless of genre, look up to. It's how do you maximize who you are, and that's what you need to do.
Yeah, and I think it's extremely important to learn that from like Maarten and Chris. Want to get your take on this too, so I'll unmute you guys. We can kind of start the group chat portion of this too. But I think that's extremely important to kind of get in where you can when you're starting out, and build up those skills in a different way. And I think it's just going back to like being able to have a career and make money in various different ways, and you learn over time. It's like, hey, if you always know you want to be an artist, great. Maybe you can't be your own artist now, but you could do production work in one way, shape, or form on a TV set, or you can contribute to the soundtrack, or you can be a writer, because you're a great musical writer and you can write lyrics and sheet music or whatever it is. How can that translate to becoming a writer? Is there some sort of that you can get to like build up those muscles and flex and build up your network and start to make money off your art, so that way it can continue to feed your other art? I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. They just say, hey, I want to be a rapper, or I want to be a singer, and like I just got to put out great music, and then like, hey, I'll be heard. And it's like, unfortunately, that's not the way it works anymore. You have to figure out a way to stand out amongst the noise. While in the great time or the great thing about right now is that you just have all the tools, kind of at your disposal. So Maarten, Chris, kind of wanted to get your takes on those things as well.
What I'm noticing with a lot of the smaller artists that I'm working with is, I guess they were trained before on how the music industry worked. It changes every day, but how it worked prior, where you had to have good music and you have to tour, you have to put out merchandise. Some of these people are, not to shade them, they're not creative outside of music or outside of making music. They don't have any other hobbies. They don't have any other assets that they can put their music into. So now they're now they have to sit with themselves in this pandemic and figure out what that is and what they can do to continue to create relevance for themselves.
Right.
So yes, I definitely agree. And I love to see other integrations. I think right now brand partnerships are completely transforming into now, obviously the consumer is a lot smarter, so we know it's a brand partnership, but the brand partnerships are a lot seamless. You were talking about Beyonce and Peloton. So with that, we're all at home. We all need some type of home workout. I would love Beyonce to tell me to run faster. I would, yes, like, okay, Beyonce, yes, I will do that. It's becoming, the brand partnerships are becoming a lot more obvious, but they're more seamless. And that's what I do love about what's in today's music industry, that not only the music has to be good, but along with the content that goes with it, you can sell me something that I'm already living in. I already like to work out. So Beyonce telling me to work out just makes me happy. Along with the fan interaction where you said, if Doja Cat ever called me stupid, yes, Doja Cat, I am now stupid. Thank you. You know, like, we have to take in those fan interactions, and an artist have to capitalize on that. I think that's just something that people need to just ingrain in their head. Like, you have these fans, you have to interact with them, and you have to do it in a way that's going to make it long lasting and memorable for them. Because who knows when we're going to go back outside?
Yeah, that's kind of, you know, the next question too that I want to, you know, kick to everybody. Maarten, we'll start with you, but you know, curious when you think, you know, the live business is going to come back around, you know, in the US, and, you know, how do you think up and coming artists should prepare for that?
Yeah, if I can just say one thing about the whole Beyonce Peloton thing. So it's believable because she's super fit, right? So you can totally imagine that she does use Peloton and has used Peloton, and this just kind of is seamless. I mean, there was also the James Blake and one of the fancy cars makers, I don't remember which one, Lexus or something. And like, he's in the car and he's driving and he's playing his song and he's saying like, I always really like to, you know, play the song in the car for the first time. And you go like, really? Do you really? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, finding those when it is seamless, it's really, I think it harkens back to like the artists, when it really works, like you can tell that they know who their audience is, and they're speaking to them in a way that they're just like, they think, oh, like, this is just what I do. And that's why I think it's like, it's important to start with like yourself and what do you like and what do you care about, and then go out there and find those. You like video games, great. Where are the gamers at? You like a specific video game, great. Where are they? What do they do? What do they care about? That's how you, and then put yourself in their shoes. Like, oh man, like I like this, and this about the game. Okay, how can you? Is there a way that you can bring that into the real world? Okay, you can't bring it into the real world. Okay, you can. Can you do VR? You know what I mean? Can you do some sort of AR thing? Like, how can you make that special?
So cool. Or the activation is so cool, it makes me get into it. I'm not a gamer. I've never played a game. I don't own any games, but whatever game that Travis Scott was in, I need it. Now I need it.
Fortnite.
That was so cool. I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. Like, now I need to like get into this game. So I love the seamless brand partnerships, guys. I love it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And Travis Scott of Fortnite is a great example of knowing where your audience is. His audience is in Fortnite, right? If Phil Collins would do that, nobody would care, right? I mean, yeah.
I mean, they might care because that one's like super unique, and they'll be like, hey, is he gonna fuck this up? But that's kind of like, that's the tension though, right? So it's really about thinking about the tension in the story that you can tell, and like if he does it the right way and he's like really, you know, kind of tongue-in-cheek about it, then it could come off and like make sense. But if he's just like an old guy trying to be in the space, then it just comes off super flat. So but that's a cool idea. But yeah, kind of curious your thoughts. Like we were saying, what do you think things are going to come back from a live standpoint, and you know, how do you think up and coming acts should be preparing for that?
So, I mean, it's Music X now, but I got on board when it was Music X Corona, right? So the guy who founded it was Bas Grasmeijer, and he had Music Tech Future, and then he started Music X Corona, and we were actually just today talking like, when is it going to be 1 year? Because it's like next month somewhere. So we need to do something. So, I mean, when is live coming back? I want to say it should be back already. So, yeah, I mean, there are so many experiments and there's so much scientific evidence right now, and this might not be like the answer that you were expecting, but so much stuff is going on about how to safely put events on. They did the research in Germany, they did it in Luxembourg, they did it in Spain. They're doing it right now in the Netherlands. And if they started earlier this month, and they'll run into March. And you can do stuff, right? But we've kind of said we're not doing anything. So I would like to see these scientifically, with the scientific foundation of what needs to be done in terms of ventilation and social distancing and mask wearing and, hygiene care and all that sort of stuff. And then just see if you can put events on. That's what I would like to see. But I'm thinking maybe, local events with local artists are going to happen right up somewhere in the summer when the weather's going to be nicer again. And then in the fall, maybe you'll see some international touring kicking off again. But if I just look at the stuff that I had tickets for, it's either now actually canceled or like postponed indefinitely because they cannot, the insurance is just annoying.
Through the roof. You put on a show and then remove it and keep doing that. Chris and Matt, curious your thoughts too.
Also the fear, that's what it is with me, because obviously, I had to change my entire business structure because of the pandemic. I think getting the fear out of people is going to be extremely difficult. We have to constantly reassure, it helps with brand marketing in terms of we can create masks, like branded masks and branded hand sanitizer. We can do the social distancing thing. It's really cute on paper, but it's when it comes to actual human interaction, they're afraid, so it's going to take a bit to get people in the US outside of that, other than Atlanta and Miami that are completely wide open. People in LA are still, terrified of the pandemic. People in New York are still completely terrified of catching the virus. So I think maybe, I don't know, I saw a tweet that 2023 is when people are going to be okay with going back outside. Hopefully it's sooner, because I never thought that I would be, I miss being pushed. I'm not going to lie. I miss being pushed. I miss people stepping on my shoes. I never thought I would ever miss that, but I do miss that. And hopefully it will become sooner than later.
I agree. Matt, curious your thoughts.
I mean, going off of that, I would agree. I don't think it'll be as long as 2023. I think the US more specifically will kind of start to open back up October, so probably middle Q2, start of Q4. I think that's when we're going to really start seeing concerts happening again. But I think the other big issue that we're still facing, I'm still facing it right now, it's whether or not these shows are actually going to play out or not, even in October when things do open. Because think of the hundreds of shows and hundreds of tours that had to be completely rescheduled, that are still being rescheduled for this summer, and which those shows are probably going to end up being pushed again to the fall. Everything from March 2020 needs to now fit in a window in 21, and then will bleed over into 22. So I think we're not going to see as many large scale tours or highly produced tours as what we're normally used to. I think we're going to see a smaller scale down type of version of that, depending on what artists are actually comfortable with going on the road again and being in not being in open air venues, but being in clubs and arenas. And it's going to be interesting how that plays out. So I think there will be a lot of local based shows where it's not a heavy lift. You don't have to fly in 40 people, or you don't have to worry about an artist coming directly from Miami, then going up to a more conservative group made in New York, where realistically it's the promoters who are liable. They can get sued. There isn't really insurance for this just quite yet. It's getting there, but that's why all the force majeures have been kind of thrown out the window the past year. So I think it'll start to pick up again around October-ish, and then I think we'll be in full swing end of Q1 22.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll start small in the fall.
It's interesting to have, it's a very US centric perception, right? in New
Exactly.
Zealand they have
They're already
normal gigs.
yeah.
I had shows play out in December in Australia, like, and
Yeah.
New Zealand, and same in Japan and Taiwan. It's like it's really the US that is behind the 8 ball, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate, but
Yeah.
I think it's a
And
good time to also just tap in, since we're going to have to start with smaller shows meaning less than 500. But this is a great place to tap into fan engagement. Like, see who your super fans are, see what your market. This is a great place, or just like, you know, good marketing, good target marketing. So,
and I was going to say it's that. And when things do come back, I think the fans are going to be in the best spot. So what can an up and coming artist take from all this stuff that we're talking about here at the end? I think it's just that, how do you add value to the fan's life? How can you put on a show with 3 or 4 other poppin' people in your area to make a great show, to make it memorable, to say, oh my God, that first show out, like I went to this local event and it was amazing. Because I think the fans are gonna have their pick, right? I think what might be cool is that I think festivals are gonna come back, because you're gonna be able to put a bunch of artists in one spot. Maybe there's gonna be like these touring festivals, or you're just gonna see these amazing bills. Like, I remember when I was younger, like the first concert I went to was the Jay-Z Rock the Mic tour, and it was like Jay-Z, 50 Cent, Busta Rhymes, Missy Elliott, Fabulous. Like, that's an amazing bill, right? You're going to get all this great talent, because now they're going to have to take all this talent and kind of like jam it into a specific tour schedule. So I think fans are going to have a great opportunity. There's going to be some really cool, unique shows. The artists, the bigger artists, they'll probably be able to charge the same that they were making before, or maybe a little bit more with these great bills that they put together. But I think they'll be able to, again, shoot it, chop it up, sell it to a bunch of different places, and monetize it in new ways that they're just starting to now. But yeah, I agree. I think it'll happen in the fall, and then more so this time next year is when it'll really kind of kick back up. And then next summer 2022, it'll be like, okay, festivals will be okay to come back again. And that being said, I think there's gonna be some issues, just like everything else. There's gonna, unfortunately, people will probably get sick. Hopefully there's nothing too extreme, but I could see that happening too, because you're going to get those promoters who are just the small guys that are just trying to get a show popping and trying to get their lives back, and they may have to cut corners, but hopefully they don't.
Yep.
Yeah. I took a step back. I completely took a step back, because I would completely die if someone got sick and blamed R&B. Like, I would be so upset. So it's just like, I took a step back personally, just pivoted to online things. But I do see people in Atlanta, people in Miami specifically, just, trying to get back into their bag. That was their bread and butter, like putting on these shows. So I really hope that we can get it together.
Agreed. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, appreciate the time. I want to kick it and do a little live Q&A session. So for those of you joining us, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And then actually what we can do is, let's just do I'm going to remove all the spotlights here, and we'll do kind of a gallery view so everybody can say what's up to one another. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to just chime in. Let's see. We'll ask everybody to unmute. There's only a few people still in here. So thanks for sticking with us, guys. I appreciate the time. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to hop in and say what's up.
What's good, everybody? Everybody hear me?
Yeah, Jay, you're good, man. How you doing?
What's good? I'm good. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Well, I appreciate all you guys, man. All you guys hit everything on the head. Everything I was thinking about for the past year. Just to give you a little synopsis about myself. I started a concierge business in Miami in 2018, wanting to wrap around and be an artist. And obviously the pandemic happened, so kind of slowed me down, but I started the business aspect of my artistry, and now I'm getting to kind of separating myself from my business to my own artist brand. Just to put that out there, guys. But a question I had: what do you guys think is the best way to get a brand partnership deal in the sports realm of things? Because I'm an ex-athlete, And I know that when performances come back, that's gonna be my thing. So I have to kind of wait till then, because I know everybody, you guys talk about jumping on TikTok, jumping on Instagram. I know my thing is gonna be like live performance. So I gotta wait till that comes back. It sucks. So brand partnerships with sports. How do you think I should start with that?
I can give some insight. So specifically, I don't work in sports, but how brand partnerships work and just marketing in general, you need to find a space where you can add value to a company. So for example, with R&B, we're obviously a lot smaller, but because we have a multicultural, quote unquote, Black audience, brands wanted to tap into that. So although there's only 200, 300, 400 people at my event, that's 300, 400, 500 people that are I have their attention, they're focused on R&B, and they need something to drink, do whatever. So I have all these people in the room. You need to capitalize on that. So whatever it is that your value, if you're bringing in, a multicultural audience or an audience that's focused on sports, align that product-based brand with your company and see how you can execute that way. For example, so say if you're doing, it's just made up. Like say you're doing like a yoga class and you want to work with a mat company. Obviously, you're going to be beneficial. That content's going to be in the photos, the videos, the promo, and all of that. Like that way, you're able to add value to that very specific audience, and that's what's going to be your selling point. So, unfortunately, I'm not the most versed in sports, but just generally how partnerships they want to spend their dollars in ways that they're going to get that return on investment, and that's all. They're always looking to look into these very small niche audiences that they can make their dollar work more for them. So that's what I would.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, Chris, I would just say the brands want the eyeballs. That's what they're paying for. So so you need to kind of like reverse engineer it, put yourself in, kind of the brand's spot and say, all right, like what audience are we trying to go after? How is this going to connect directly to the audience? So if you're going to be throwing events and you're going to be doing it, you're talking about sports. And I know, from our conversations, Jay, you told me a little bit about, the services that you've provided in the past. So I kind of a rough idea of where you're at. But if you're going to be like doing events with the sports teams, or you're going to be having athletes come to the events on behalf of the sports teams, you need to figure out what the hook is. So then go the other route and say, from a fan's perspective, what am I looking for? So if your big thing is like you're gonna connect the athletes with the fans, how do you create value for the fan right now? Because you can't bring the athlete out just yet, but what can you do? Can you create a newsletter around specific athletes, right? Like you're going to create a newsletter about athletes that donate to local charities, and you're going to talk about all those things. And then you're going to do a Zoom session just like this, and you're going to bring the athlete on here. You can't bring it in person, but you can bring them here. And so now you can build up an email list of people that are interested in athletes that care about this specific thing. Now you have 5, in a year's time, right? When events are coming back around, you have 500, you have 1,000, you have 2,000 names on your email list, and you get 1,000 people to open up every email that you send out, and you get 500 people to come to your events. Now there's real value there. Oh shit, okay, Beats. Beats has this new project that they're doing, and it's centered around philanthropy. Well, this guy works with athletes, which Beats does, and he works with he works on philanthropic endeavors. Okay, this is the guy that we got to talk to. So you're creating the value and putting yourself in between those two things. You're creating value for the fan who wants to be attached and be around the athlete. Then you're creating the value for the athlete because you're putting them in front of the fan. That's a good PR move. Then you're also creating the value for the brand that is now trying to sell to that specific audience as well. So, and then you can create content with Beats, or maybe they shoot a commercial with you and they pay you to kind of be the, creative director for the project too. So there's a number of different ways to kind of tap into that as well. But that's, just kind of a rough idea on how to put something together like that. Just find a very niche demographic and build up the audience now, so that in a year's time, when you do events, you have somebody to actually market to.
Got you. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jay, appreciate the question. Happy to spend a couple more minutes chatting through with anybody else, that may have some questions for the panel here. Feel free to just, if you guys don't want to, raise your hand or anything like that, feel free to just kind of jump in the chat, mention it there as well. I'll be happy to read it off. But yeah, thanks for everybody for coming through. We are going to chop this up. We're going to edit everything. It's going to be out in the next couple of weeks. If you guys are on the newsletter, you guys will get that. If not, I'll throw that in the chat window here as well. I'll email everybody after too with the additional links, and I appreciate the time, guys. Before you guys get out of here, the panel, just want to say thanks again for coming through. And yeah, also, where can everybody find you at? Chris, we'll start with you. Where can people find you? What are you working on that you're excited about? Tell us, kind of a little bit of the plug section here. What are you working on that you're excited about?
I'm super excited for more fan engagement opportunities. I'm working with a few brands to kind of just put on some listening parties, put on some just R&B and centric activations on social media through Zoom, through Clubhouse as well, just to push forward R&B and push forward some of these independent artists. When it comes to these labels as well, I think they have a handle on it, but I'm honestly just pushing through social activations for now. Hopefully we can get a few drive-in shows in. I've been working on a few of those. Those are going to be super cool. So that's what I've been working on. If you're an R&B artist or if you want to connect, feel free to just email me. I'm at chris@rmba.com.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Maarten, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about anything that's to do with the direct to fan.
Yes.
I think that's really the way forward for just about any artist out there, is to start flipping that value relationship with your fans, and talking to them directly. And then let's see, we have at Stingray, we have our partnership with the Montreux Jazz Festival coming up in July. That's super exciting. Who knows? Maybe I can even go there. And yeah, I was talking about Garden earlier, so that's super interesting too. We'll see where that ends up. There's a question from Brittany for Cristina.
Yes, yeah, Chris, this is for you. I would like to learn more about what you do for new artists and how you would take an artist through a rebranding.
I would take an artist to a rebranding. This is a very long answer, actually. Feel free to hit me offline, Brittany. But for new artists, it's interesting that a new artist would need a rebrand, because if they're a new artist, no one knows who they are. So maybe you're just going to fine tune what the branding is, or fine tune some areas of your branding to make that artist more marketable, more accessible to other people. But I would love to talk to you offline. I feel like this is a very long question. I don't want to take time off of it, but let's connect. I'm definitely excited to hear what you're working on.
Yeah, and I think just a quick take on that too, is really just think about who you are and what your music is about, what you're trying to say, and where your audience is in the world. Start there, and you can figure out what you want to talk about and how you want to, the photos you want to take. Follow brands that you like, you know what I mean? Get a good understanding of like, hey, what are the best in the business doing? How are they crafting their message? How are they creating their images? And at the end of the day, just let it rip. Think about it this way. If you're just starting out, the majority of your fans do not know you. You have nothing to lose. Just let it rip. Try new things out. And guess what? It's your Instagram page. It's your Twitter account. If you don't like the things, in 6 months or a year, just go and delete them. Like it doesn't need to be permanent if you don't want it to be. So don't feel like bogged down. And I know that's tough, because when you're starting out, you want it to be just right and just perfect. Done is better than perfect when you're starting out. Done.
And it's a lot easier when you're yourself. When it comes to a rebrand, I feel like sometimes that word rebrand means that you're trying to cater yourself to another audience or another market that may not be your fit. When you're yourself, it's very easy to market for you, because it's coming to you seamlessly. So when you think about, for me, when I hear the word rebrand, it just seems like you're trying to target to a way that maybe isn't working for you, but may not be your audience's target audience in the first place. So yeah, let's talk offline. I definitely want to answer that question for you.
Definitely. Cool. Maarten, real quick, I don't think you shouted out the newsletter or your email or anything like that. Maarten, we actually have a question for you, so kind of perfect too. So kind of within that, This is from Ronald. Is SoundCloud a good platform to promote music on compared to others?
I mean, this goes back to something that's been said a few times. It is if your fans are there. I mean, SoundCloud caters to a quite specific, music audience, and if they're there, then it's super good, because then if you put your music on SoundCloud, people will share it on SoundCloud, right? I think most plays that you get on SoundCloud are through other people's pages and not really your own. That's the thing, I think, for a lot of artists there. So yeah, I mean, if I don't know what music you or whoever you're talking about here makes, but I think the key question is whether your fans are there. And yeah, that goes back to something that's been
I think
has
SoundCloud
been
is
said
a good
before.
fan moment. I don't think that that's the best platform to push initially. You know, obviously it's not a major DSP, but if you want to drop a Lucy or give us a cover or give us something like cute midnight at 2 p.m. for the fans, SoundCloud is the best place to do it. SZA does it all the time and I love it. So
yeah, I was going to say the other thing too there that is interesting, Maarten, is that, was it last week or the week before, that SoundCloud's now talking about, a completely different pay structure. Where they're going to be paying artists directly. Potentially doing that. Curious your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, they didn't tell us how yet.
Right. Yeah.
But
what
they
how?
Sorry.
Yeah,
exactly.
It, but we're not going to tell you how yet. But we're doing it.
But yeah, it's I think there's a lot of potential when it comes to if it would be like a more direct to fan thing, right? So more along the lines of tipping that we see on other platforms as well. They don't have to go like a user-centric payment model. That's not going to work out for them.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. That was my first thought too. It was like, okay, you guys, this is like the announcement for the announcement.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we're doing this. We're gonna come
ready
soon
for us to announce what we're gonna do next.
Yeah, we're like, what? Why are you like? Okay, cool. And I'm sure there's some like very smart reason for why they're doing that. You know what I mean? It's probably some sort of investor thing that they're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, it's the other way around of what Deezer has done, of course. They've been banging banging the drum for a user-centric payment model for so long, but can actually implement it anywhere because nobody wants to play.
Yeah. So yeah, but back to the original question of SoundCloud, it's like if your audience is there, then yeah, and yeah, just find out where your fans are living and then go all in there. That'll be the best use of anyone's time, like as opposed to like trying to be everywhere all the time. Take some time, think about who you are, what you're trying to be about, and go down that rabbit hole. But appreciate the insight there. Matt, what are your what are the projects you're working on that you're super excited about? Where can people get at you as well, as we kind of wrap up here?
It's hard to say because I'm like in the middle of 30 different new projects right now. It's one's I can't tell exactly what it is, but one's with a very famous comedian that's going to be an interview style format with live audience Q&A. We're working on about 10 different film projects at the moment, a couple streaming projects with a couple brands in some like very cool locations, couple podcast opportunities. So it's just we're snatching up as much as we can right now and building everything out, and once the world's out, we're gonna just hit the gas. So we love building stuff with cool people. So I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, email me at mlevin@endeavorcontent.com. Like, we're here to build stuff for the people, so it's fun.
Cool, man. Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's time today. The panelists, the guests who came through. Again, I'll send out an email with links to everybody so everyone can connect with one another. And yeah, appreciate the time, guys. Hope you guys had a great time as well. Look forward to chatting it up in the future as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, stay safe, and yeah, we'll see you when everything gets back to normal.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.